You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Our latest thing that makes official. Welcome to 16 years and 24 episodes of the Chris Voss Show. Today we have an amazing young man on the show. We're going to get into some of the deets on how he's going to give you advice on how to improve your life. But in the meantime, did I just make a rhyme there? Wow, I should make that a bit. Anyway, go to goodreads.com/says Chris Voss. I never know what's going to come out of my mouth sometimes at the beginning of the show on the ramble. And facebook.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, all those stupid ass places on the internet they call social media. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, an amazing young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his book that came out June 14th, 2023, and some of his insights. Outwork Them All, a Gen X Guide to Business and Leadership Success by Sean P. Kling. We're going to get into it with him and all of his data and all that good stuff. He is a Gen X business mentor and serial entrepreneur. As a CEO of the Araya Group and author of Outwork Them All, he is committed to helping others scale their businesses and dominate their industries. I just had to give that punch. Welcome to the show. How are you,
I'm
Sean?
doing amazing. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Give us your .coms. Where do you find people on your interwebs that they should find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Sean Kling, my whole full name, SeanKling.com. You can also find us on the Araya Group. That's AARA Claims.com. That's where the Araya Group is at, Araya Claims. And then we're also on YouTube under the Kling Connection and Araya Claims.
So give us a 30,000 overview. What's inside your book?
So my book is basically teaching younger generations how to adapt like Generation X did. We're the last generation that lived before technology. We worked with World War II veterans when we were first starting our careers. And by the end of our career, we'll be working with people that aren't even born yet. Wow. So it's a span of teaching 20th century ways of operating business and not always relying on technology.
So why is Gen X have the smartest corner on the block on this? I mean, I know we're the greatest generation that was ever created, but why the Gen X? Why has Gen X got the deets on this?
So we're like really a small generation compared to prior generations and post generations. And we've lived in such a unique time. I mean, we grew up in the start of the Cold War where, there was an East and West Germany, and we were still getting under our desks in school for nuclear bomb testing, all the way to, post 9/11 world where, we had a financial crash in 2008, and we've seen it all. As a matter of fact, historically speaking, Gen X is the number one generation that has been at war longer than any other generation in the U.S. history.
And usually with our boomer parents. No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah, mom and dad.
Yeah, I mean they didn't. I still have to this day have to go. I have to check in at 10 o'clock with my mom and tell her that you know where your kids are. You remember that? They actually had to put a fucking ad on TV saying, "Do you know where your kids are? It's 10 o'clock at night."
I remember that.
People were like, "Wait, do we have kids, honey? We should go find them."
I remember those ads.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was funny, wasn't it? Yeah. It tells you. I mean, we were latchkey kids. I'm not sure. I mean, we're more like, I don't know, the term should be up for adoption kids or, I don't know, roaming fucking, I don't know, whatever kids. But we sure learned a lot. And you kind of learn to be self-accountable and self-aware and self-providing for it because, you lived off hose water pretty much. God knows what was in those hoses and those fucking in that water back then. It was probably all lead, and which may explain a few things about me personally. Brain damage, severe. Give us some more data on how this works and some of the things you espouse in the book.
So some of the things I look at is, as far as marketing and sales and business development go. Some of the things I look at is today everybody is online. Everybody's trying to put stuff on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, trying to catch the attention of, whoever their consumer is or their potential client. And we forget about the old school way of doing things. And like my father owned a very successful business, and he told me the number one way to sales and development is to become friends with your clients. And you can't do that online. So a lot of the stuff that goes on in the book, we talk about shaking hands and taking people out to golf games or maybe a baseball game or inviting them over for your Christmas party and building and nurturing a relationship that is not technology based and that is more personal and interactive. And you'll find that people want to buy more and work more with a friend than they do a phantom that they've met online.
Yeah. And giving Gen Z and millennials advice on this, they kind of have a hard time with this because they're so used to the phone. They're so used to kind of these walls being around them. I remember when I first started running into them, I'd sell something on eBay or something, and they would come to the house and sit out front, and they wouldn't come knock on the door. And somehow they would still expect you to be there, that you knew that they had pulled up out front. I don't know. I just sit and look out my windows all day long. And then eventually they text and be like, "Hey, I've been waiting for 5 minutes, dude. I'm out front." And my brain will scramble. And just like, why the fuck didn't you just knock on the door, man? It's like they're afraid of door knocking and answering phones. And
I remember the very first text I got. It sticks out in my mind. I was laying in bed and I was supposed to meet my brother for like breakfast or something. And my brother's younger than me. He's 4 years younger than me. So he's a millennial. And I got my cell phone. I had an old Nextel. Remember those with the chirping and stuff? And I looked down and it said, "Won't make it." I said, what is this? And then I realized, oh, he texted. I've never texted before. I don't know what this is. So he introduced me to text messaging. I had never dealt with. We dealt with beepers where we used to put the codes in, but never text.
Yeah, I'm still trying to catch up to it all. It's fucking crazy, man. It's just so insane, basically, really. And they still do that to this day. I'll sit there and go, anytime you need to have something delivered, like I'm big on delivery because I hate going into Walmart and all that shit. And it's kind of a issue for me, really, personally, if you can't tell. And I even trying to communicate with the drivers and stuff. Like they never check the text messages you send. They're just phoning in most of their work most of the time. Some of the things you talk about in the book, you talk about untapped networking opportunities hidden beyond the digital world. I think you've touched on that a little bit. Let's suss this out. What does that mean and why is it important?
So outside of the digital world, if you can make friends, I'll give you an example. I have friends that are in successful industries that I work with, whether it's in the airline industry or in construction industry or what have you, that I've managed to cultivate a good relationship with outside of technology. And you build this trust with people where you're not just sitting there, send them a text or you send them a funny IM or something. They actually get to know you, get to know their kids, and you get to know their family. And, life is a journey. It's not about instant gratification. In today's social media, it really pushes instant gratification. If you don't get that like, you don't get that comment, you move on. And 2 weeks later, whatever you posted on Facebook is not seen anymore. Whereas when you're dealing with somebody and spending time with them and actually getting to physically know them away from just being on a cell phone or a laptop or a tablet, you get to know the real person. And it really strives home who you're dealing with and whether or not you want to work with them, not this painted impression that they put online of who they are and what they want you to think they are.
Isn't it funny how, we have such that fake thing? We see that I've been single all my life and I run huge dating groups. And it's so funny how much of that online branding and positioning and really a lot of fakery too, as well. I mean, let's face it, there's just so many people that are just faking it, I guess, and presenting these fake online, you see them all the time getting busted and called out where, you find out that they've just been renting Ferraris and they don't really own a Ferrari. And I just saw a thing today that exploded virally on TikTok where this TikTok influencer, I think she has like 5 million followers, and she is a fitness and diet person for the last year, she's been on Ozempic secretly.
Oh.
Meanwhile, she's making all these videos. Yeah, if you eat, I don't know, 5 pounds of pie, you'll be fine. You just have to eat it right, or, whatever bullshit they're selling. And, she's on there eating stuff and, you can get away with this. And meanwhile, she's cheating with the Ozempic and losing weight.
That's the crap I'm talking about, man.
Yeah.
Like, you see it all the time. And
all the time. There's a Liver King Netflix thing that's going to come out, and like that Liver King, he built hundreds of millions of dollars in sales of workout crap based on the lie that he was natty. He didn't. That means natural, folks. For you don't know roids, that he wasn't using steroids to enhance himself. When anybody who knows how steroids work and what you look like when you distended organs you get with steroids, clearly he's on steroids, but the amount that he could make hundreds of millions of dollars without doing the thing. But yeah, it's kind of funny, like getting out from behind these things. Like many times you have to really be careful. You meet dates, and most men and women are utilizing it. From what I hear, I don't know, I don't see a lot of men doing it, but I see now there's these AI photos women use that are completely 40 years fucking off what they look like. It makes them look like a 10 and they're like a negative 10. They show up snaggletooth and they want to bite you and you have to give them a rabies shot and shit. It's kind of horrible.
Oh, I'm glad I'm not in that world.
I'm sure some women have dated some guys who are the same, but it's such a fake world. Yeah. And you're just sitting there just going, what the fuck? And so you help them get back to the realization to build real relationships with human beings.
Yeah, among many other things, but that's the primary focus, is to build real relationships and have realistic goals. If people see things on YouTube or on television, like you were saying, like the Ferrari and the $1 million home, that's not realistic for everybody, and not everybody's going to do that, and not everybody's going to go out and buy somebody's book, and not everybody's going to be a successful CEO. Some people have no business owning a business; they should be working for other people, but they're sold on this idea and this perception, and it's been relatively the past 10 years that you've really seen a lot of it creeping up, and it's crazy that the fugazi that's out there that bamboozles most young people out of their money.
Yeah, and it's funny how so many of them don't really understand. They don't check it. Like I can see a lot of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's bullshit, And like the simple rule: if it's too good to be true, if it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. It's amazing how many people don't. They just fall for it. You're just like, seriously? Like that was clearly too good to be true. Like, at what point would you ever think that was going to be a reality? Really, it would be nice. So it would be nice if angels came out my butt, but that's not going to happen. I don't know. That might be painful, actually.
I'll give you a classic example. You see this online all the time. Everybody says, "Oh, the boomers, they bought their house for $60,000 and everything was so affordable." But I want you to think about something. When the greatest generation, our grandparents' generation, or even some boomers, I know my parents would buy their house for $60,000. But if they did, right, they also weren't paying for streaming services, $100,000 cars with all the bells and whistles. They had punch down locks and roll down windows. They weren't spending their money on cell phones. They weren't spending their money on subscriptions for this social media, that social media, for a blue check mark. So if you take all that away and you get back to the basics of what prior generation, even to some extent Gen X, because we didn't have a lot of that either. The internet was an oddity. You can actually live kind of feasibly if you're taking away hundreds or even thousands of dollars in expenses that you're paying for things that life to be easier to fit in with a group. And that's a great example of just overspending. So is it really the boomers that did that, or the greatest generation that did that, or was it ourselves being sold on this idea that we need all this stuff and then you become a slave to this technology?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting. The one thing too with that whole boomer thing and whatever, I love. I mean, there are some changes and some differences with the whole mortgage thing and appreciation and living through the greatest generation. I mean, they did drive it with their economy and consumption, and it doesn't help that that there was so many of them, and part of it was the post-war savings. All these boys coming home from the war, and they had tons of money, and I think there was also home assistance for veterans and stuff. But it was just it was a perfectly timed thing that you couldn't really even recreate. And I see these Gen Xers complaining about or Gen Zers complaining about how they're broke all the time, but then they're like posting, hey, here's my third meal of the day that came from Uber Eats or what's the other one? I forget the name.
Grubhub,
and you're like, wait, you're on Uber Eats 4 times a day buying a $10 taco that costs $40 by the time you get it delivered. So you're having it marked up 4 fucking times, and you never cook anything. So you're doing that. There was actually an article recently that because of, the economy, millennials and Gen Zers now have discovered they can make coffee at home instead of going to Starbucks.
Who would have thought, right?
Who would have thunk it? Who would have thunk it? Wow.
Yeah. And that's the thing with Gen X. Like like when I went to high school, I was not college bound. That was not me. I barely graduated high school. I played football. They kept me eligible to play on the team. I'll be the first to admit it. But they taught people like me blue collar stuff. Like you went to a vocational school when you were in high school. And when I got out of high school, before I went in the service, and even after I was in the service, I went and worked in construction. I was a welder. I was a pipe fitter, and I did conveyor installation. And today they don't teach blue collar stuff. And I'm a huge fan of Mike Rowe, the guy that does Dirty Jobs.
Oh, yeah.
He's a huge blue collar guy. And I think these kids that go to college and get these senseless degrees that get in $100,000 worth of debt or $200,000 worth of debt and can't get a job could have, and a lot of them could have gone into some sort of vocational trade.
Oh, yeah.
And made a lot of money.
Especially now, because there's a shortage of people who want to be in the vocational trade. I mean, you got welders that are making $400,000 a year and are richer than fucking doctors at this point. Plumbers, HVAC, all these guys that are tradesmen. We have, with the baby boomers, I think it's for every 7 baby boomers, and these guys are journeymen. They have whole careers knowing their trade. For every 7 one of these journeymen that are retiring, there's only one little noob to replace them, and they're noobs. They're not journeymen. They don't know their trade. And it's kind of interesting how that's going to play out. They say that the price of everything is going to soar in the future because of that. You'll be paying your plumber the price you pay your doctor for open heart surgery or some shit. You're going to need insurance for the plumber.
People are afraid to get their hands dirty, and that's a Gen X trait too. That we're that last generation. Maybe you might get some older millennials, so I'll throw some of them in there as well. Mm-hmm. That actually went to a vocational school or went and learned on the job training. I mean, it's hard to meet a Gen Xer that doesn't know somebody that went to jail, went to rehab, or went in the military,
or was the person who did all that,
or was the person.
Man, I might have seen a couple of those movies. I didn't go to jail, folks. But yeah, so let's get into some other things here. 5 action steps to build a team of like-minded people in order to create comfortable company culture. Tease a little bit of that, if you would, out.
You have to take steps and have, I guess you would say, like a plan in place to put your company into perspective and make it work. A lot of people watch these videos and they get these hypes out there that say you should do this, you'll make $1 million in a year. But setting action plans in place, putting things in place, I don't want to give too much away from the book, but what I will say this is putting things in place to set yourself up successfully and setting up your team successfully is a systems process that you need to get everything going. And it's not just some hype video. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of concentration, and it takes a lot of team effort to be successful. Most businesses fail within a few years of setting up. And, you've been on this show numerous amounts of years. I've been in business a lot of time, and we've seen a lot of people come and go. And if you don't have processes, you don't have steps, and you don't have the right people in place, you will not succeed as a business, and you will fail miserably.
So it sounds like in your book, you talk a lot about interpersonal relationships and one-on-one inhuman personal relationships, as opposed to trying to do everything for the phone and building on that foundation.
Yeah, that's a big thing of this book, just building personal relationships. here's the thing, like when you spend time with somebody, you get to know them, you get to know their nuances, their quirks, and you get to know what's good and what's not good. And you can really read an individual. If somebody is full of crap, which we've all ran into, they can destroy your business. They can destroy not only your business, but they can destroy who you are and your brand, your what people think of you. So getting to spend time with the proper people, getting to spend time and doing things with these people and getting to read people. You have to have a sixth sense. And I kind of talk about that in the book. You have to have a sixth sense. And if something doesn't feel right or somebody doesn't feel right, you need to walk away from them. And that's the problem with online. You don't get to gauge what people are doing or what people are saying because they're putting up this big charade. And I mean, I can go over 100 people that are on YouTube right now that put on this fake nuance that people, back them up and they think, oh, she's such a nice person or he's such a great guy. You don't really know this person.
Yeah.
This person could be the biggest scumbag in the entire world. And that's what building a personal relationship with somebody. My father and uncle had a very, very successful construction business, but every company picnic, every time they went on vacation, they always invited their biggest clients and the biggest contributors, and they made a personal relationship with them. When my grandmother died, those people showed up at her funeral. When there was weddings, we showed up at the weddings, and it just built a personal relationship where you had this strong nexus of people that you wanted to work with.
Mm-hmm. And that's really important because we're still, regardless of all this noise that we have about, phones and emails and texting and stuff, it's interesting to me how hard it is to get people to do one-on-one stuff. Like one of the problems we have with our dating thing in the dating groups that I oversee is I host what are called meetup.com meetup groups. So basically what they do is we try and meet up in person because we've found that dating apps just aren't working for single people. It's a real freaking mess. But the problem is I can't get people out to meet in person. And I'll have people that are grownups, like you're my age, that are like, I'm afraid to meet people. And you're like, why? Stranger danger. And I'm like, you go to 7-Eleven and Smith's and Costco every day. It's filled with fucking strangers. What is your deal? And I think COVID kind of compounded that problem. It really isolated people, and it seems like a lot of people have lost that ability to take and be human beings to each other. It's kind of weird.
The way I see the dating world, I mean, it's a train wreck because you have one group of people saying, oh, you have to be this feminist. You don't want a man to take care of you. You have one group of guys saying, if she has 2 kids and was divorced and you're 50 years old, you should be dating a 21-year-old. And it has everybody believing that there's something better. And when you have so many options, like a swipe right on a Bumble or a Tinder or something like that, it gives you an unperceived notion that you're more valuable than what you are. So you tend to blow people off that would be good mates. Yeah. And I mean, the dating world is just, I have no idea how to fix that. I've just seen people battle with it. I battled with it for a number of years, and it's depressing. It's really sad.
It's really sad. Let's put it that way. And then half the people you meet, they have some batshittery. The worst thing is when you find someone you like, they're finally feminine, and then you find out they're into conspiracies or nutball shit or weird ass politics, or, they're starting to tell you about the aliens in the sky and the, shit. And you're just like, oh my fucking God. She was great until she opened her mouth.
I had a date one time with a girl, and I know this is a little off subject, but I had a date one time with this girl, took her to a really nice restaurant because I'm old fashioned. I like doing that type of stuff. And I'm sitting at the table with her, and she was not really the type of girl that I would date, but I was like, I'd give her a chance, I'm no prize. So why not? Why not? And I'm sitting across the table from this girl, and she looks at me dead smack in the face as the waiter's coming to bring the food out. And she goes, you know what? I don't want to get hurt again. And she stood up and left. And the waiter put the food down, and he looked at me, and I was like, I'll take it to go. And he goes, do you want to leave? I said, no, I'm going to enjoy my dinner.
It's insane. I mean, they need almost, I almost, it's a wonder I don't have a rule with dating where I'm like, you have to show up with, I have to get a note from your psychologist. Just insane. I mean, anyway, but no, they can't develop good relationships, which is what we're talking about, inhuman stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us about why you wrote the book, some of your experiences growing up, and why you felt like this is something that really needed to be put out there and educate people in the world.
My main motivation, I had a couple really big motivations, but one of them was around about the time that I wrote the book, maybe about a year or so before, a friend of mine named Joe, he passed away. And I hadn't seen Joe in years. He had gotten into, some bad stuff in his life and been in and out of jail. And when he died, from his substance abuse, I remember I went back to Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from. And my daughter said to me, she goes, "Dad, you haven't seen this guy in years. Like, why do you care? You haven't seen him in 20 years. And I played high school football with him and knew him since I was in Pee Wee football since I was 6 years old. And it struck me, and I said, we had relationships with each other growing up because we didn't have our parents around. Yeah. And these kids were the ones that were around the first time we drank a beer, the first time we kissed a girl, the first time we smoked a cigarette, did all this other stuff. And we shared those experiences with those guys and those girls, and they held a special place in our heart. Whatever they may have become later in life, they were special to us at that point. And it struck me as Gen X is really different. And this story needs to be shared, and this lifestyle needs to be shared. And if I can influence one young person to kind of even taste what we lived through and the way that our lives were, and how you can apply that to your own success. I mean, there's a lot of successful Gen Xers now. Look at Ron DeSantis, Elon Musk. I mean, these guys are all Gen Xers, and a lot of them lived through this stuff. And if I can apply this as to business and in life and help somebody younger, that's why I wrote the book.
Get those, I deal with a lot of Gen X or Gen Z. I always I'm getting so old, memories going. I deal with a lot of Gen Z in the gaming communities that we run, and the millennials too. And the Gen Z, it's really interesting the world that they're living in and the way they look at stuff. They're really struggling. They don't know how to build relationships. They're not getting married. They're not having kids. They don't even really date. Part of that is because they don't find anything attractive on the market to what's going on. And, their biology knows they need to find chaste women that they can pair bond with and build a relationship. But yeah, fun is fun.
I mean, I see that as a step away from cultural norms. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. That's not my thing. It's just a shift away from cultural norms. When we were growing up, people got married. You married your high school sweetheart. You maybe got married to somebody you went to college with. And with a move away from religion, a move away from cultural norms and mentorship from different families that may have not come from a broken home, you see that more and more now, where this is not commonplace. I mean, we're not having kids anymore. People are not having kids anymore. But yet you go back 2 or 3 generations, religion didn't even they told you not even to practice birth control, and you'd have 5, 6 siblings. And now we're lucky you have 1 kid anymore. So it's a shift away from cultural norms.
Yeah. And biology too, as well. There's a whole mucking about of that shit going on. Men and women are different. They're not equal. They're very different in biology and the roles that we play in life, the contributions we make to each other, our children. But we're designed to be integral, and just like a puzzle piece where, one piece is supposed to fit and balance out the other, and vice versa. On your website, tell us about some of the things that you offer there to help people, et cetera, et cetera.
So at SeanKling.com, outside of my book, I offer, I can come into your company and, speak with you or your business or your employees or whatever, and do kind of a talk about Gen X and how to provide the type of education and business development using these old techniques. I also do some one-on-one coaching that if you're a business owner or somebody like that, or even you don't have to be a business owner, but you can just be somebody that's looking for a little guidance. Get a hold of me. I can do some coaching. And then we also offer some other types of packages where we will do maybe like an audit of your company and say, what are some things that we can try to reel you in from maybe your spending and simplify things. We spend massive amounts of money on social media stuff. And a lot of times you don't have to do that. It takes one good client. It doesn't take a million small ones to make a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's pretty wild. You bill yourself as let me see if I can get this right here. Where did it go? You bill yourself as the no BS business mentor. Tell us what that means.
I'm definitely my father and grandfather's child. You know, I don't fluff. I don't make things up. I'm going to call it out.
You're
You
a
know,
Gen Xer.
Yeah, that's right, man. You got to call it out when something's not right and it doesn't feel right. You call it out. There's no pussyfooting around. There's no, hey, you know, let's make you feel good and strike your back. No, it's screwed up. Let's fix it, because the longer you delay, the longer the cancer forms and the more it hurts your business. And let's get you something that works. Stuff is not going to go away, and you can't pacify people by just telling them what they want to hear.
And that's what Gen Xers do. People, they don't bullshit around. We don't have time for this. We got to go, I don't know, drink out of the hose or something. That's what we do. I'm pretty sure I swallowed a few spiders and bugs while I was drinking out of the hose too. There was kind of somebody told me somewhere in my childhood there, I was like, there's spiders in there, right? And I was like, maybe I should think about this a little bit more. And then I just drank from those.
Yeah, they're drowned anyway. You don't have to worry.
Yeah, they drown anyway.
They're dead. It's protein by the time
you got acid. Yeah, think of it that way. So what more do we need to plug out for you? I know you have a claims business. Do we want to get a plug out for that?
Sure. So outside of SeanKling.com, I own Araya Claims, Araya Public Adjusting. It's part of the Araya Group. And the business I own is one of the best kept secrets in the insurance industry. Most people don't even know that we exist. So when you have a homeowner's insurance claim or a boat or a trailer, you can do auto, but we really don't. You file your insurance claim, and the insurance company sends out an adjuster, and they tell you how much money you're going to get, and that's just what you accept. Mm-hmm. Well, 46 of the 50 states have this secret thing called a public insurance adjuster. And I was actually just in California helping people with some of the wildfires that happened there earlier this year. Yeah. And what you can do is you can hire somebody like me at no cost. There's no cost for you to this. We go out and we adjust your claim, and we act as your representative. In most states, there's only 3 people that are allowed to adjust an insurance claim. You as a policyholder that have the contract with the insurance company, an attorney, obviously an attorney, and a public insurance adjuster. The public insurance adjuster is the most cost-effective way to handle an insurance claim. And we will take, in most cases, whatever the insurance company offers you, and sometimes get you up to 700% more. And we're paid on contingency. So the more money we get you legally, the more money we get you, the more money we make for ourselves. If I don't make you anything, I don't get paid. Wow. So it's advantageous for you to hire somebody like me, because there's really not much to lose in that circumstance.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, insurance companies are trying to nickel and dime you and play games. They're like, I've had that with cars where you have a $40,000 car and our client rear-ended it, but we'll give you $20,000 for it, and then you got to start throwing shit around. And
I could tell you so many nightmare stories. I mean, being in Florida, I was licensed. Yeah, that's where I live.
That insurance over there is going crazy, man. Lack thereof.
I'll tell you what. I mean, the insurance scam that they pulled on the people in Florida. I mean, you could do an entire segment on this, but there was a law in place since the 1890s that if you had to sue your insurance company in Florida for not honoring a contract, which an insurance policy is a contract, they had to pay your attorney's fees. And they did this for years. And in 2022, the insurance companies were all going insolvent. And don't even get me started on that, why they went insolvent. But they were all going insolvent, and they were saying, oh, it was because of this law that was 130 years old at the time. And we need to do away with this law so we can bring insurance back to Florida and then turn around and we'll lower your rates. What did they do? Everybody jumped on the bandwagon, told their state legislator they wanted to get rid of this old law. They did. Not only did insurance rates go up, but now your coverage dipped down and you can't get the adequate coverage and that you need, or even defense that you need. And they're learning this now in Florida because of the storm that happened this past October that came through, those 2 back-to-back storms, that people are getting denied, they can't get paid, and nobody will represent them. And these houses are just covered with tarps, and that's it. The laws are done. And these insurance companies went bankrupt on purpose, and now they're finding out they're funneling money to other state insurance. Say you had XYZ insurance in Florida, XYZ Insurance might also have an office in Georgia. So they were sending the money to Georgia and then saying in Florida, we don't have enough money.
Florida branch is broke, but
plus during COVID, they were backlogging the courts to settle these cases, and the attorney's fees were adding up. And then all of a sudden when the courts opened up, what happened? Oh, we're going insolvent because we can't afford to pay the attorneys. And they went bankrupt and everybody got stuck. Wow. And that's the real truth. And you're seeing it in other states now happening in California, Texas. This is happening all around the country, and it's a big scam. Name one other industry that you're required by law to have something. If you drive a car, you have to have insurance. If you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance. And if you don't, you lose that license. Name one other industry that has that.
Mm-hmm. I think we had someone on who's in the same field that you're in, and they told me that a lot of the insurance companies' contracts they're writing now are designed with multiple ways to get out of paying you. Like they're just the language in them is just fucking designed to, make it so it's so easy for them just to say, no, we're not going to pay that. There's some loophole or whatever thing going on.
That's what they do. A Florida insurance policy. Now, I'm not talking if you're a high-end multimillionaire. They have different insurance than all of us. The guys that live in the $100 million mansion down in Miami, that's different. All different. The average homeowner, they're tricking these people so much into saying, we'll make your insurance only maybe $3,000 a year, but you're not going to have wind coverage on any of your stuff. What's a hurricane? It's wind.
It's wind.
You don't get any coverage. We're going to give you only $10,000 if you come home and your sink leaks and your kitchen's flooded out, all your cabinets and flooring are shot. We're going to only give you $10,000, but we're going to take $2,000 out of a deductible. So you're only going to get $8,000 to fix your kitchen. And that's the stuff they're putting into these policies, and that's what people can afford.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. So as we go out, give people a final pitch out to onboard with you, reach out to you and find out more about what you do. And then, of course, order the book and .coms.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to reach out to me, SeanKling.com is the best way to go. You can reach out to me and ask me any type of business question. I don't charge for questions. If it's insurance related, go to arayaclaims.com and you can shoot us a question there. I don't charge for questions. So feel free to reach out to me, or you can check out my travel channel on YouTube called The Kling Connection, where me and my girlfriend travel around the country and we explore different things and different aspects of living the best Gen X life. And you can find Kling Connection on Rumble and on YouTube, just my last name and the word connection, and find us there.
Thank you very much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it and giving us the insights on, I think we should throw these all at the millennials and Gen Zers and help them out. Get them to learn to deal with stuff. It's kind of an interesting psychology they have, a lot of victimhood mentality. So maybe teach them how to be more proactive and self-actualized and self-accountable. So gotta love it. Being raised by helicopter parents is not the right thing to do. I was telling my mom the other day, I was joking about how I think it was mom or it was a guest or somebody, and I was joking about how, the neighbor, if we did something wrong in the neighborhood would beat us and then spank us, and then the neighbor would bring us to our mom would spank the shit out of us, and then she'd say, wait till your dad was home. So if you did something wrong in your neighborhood or at school or something, you're going to get 3 or 4 mental adjustments to your attitude. And that seemed a little excessive at the time. In looking at the product that's come out from Millennials Parenting, I'm just kind of like, yeah, maybe we should bring that back.
The wooden spoon, man. I remember getting suspended one time from school, and I was more scared of going home to see my mom. And I remember looking at her, and she was pacing back and forth with a wooden spoon in her hand. And she broke the wooden spoon. And then when she got the plastic spoon, I was like, oh, I'm locking myself in my room.
Yeah. What would happen to me is if they broke the wooden spoon across your butt, they get even angrier, and then they tell you to go get a new one to finish the job. And it was really great. It was a fun time. Fun times. But it was spanking fetish after all that bullshit. But it was painful. It wasn't fun at all. So maybe that's why. Anyway, jokes aside, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Order the book wherever fine books are sold. Outwork them all. A Gen X Guide to Business and Leadership Success, out June 14th, 2023 by Sean P. Kling. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out. Great.